We are going to look at what do plants and flowers need to grow at their best. Germination of seeds, pollination of seeds, parts of a seed, parts of the root, parts of the stem, parts of the leaf, and parts of the flower. Experience what you learn firsthand to make it your own. Experience your learning material through movement, through your body. Experience it with all of your senses, in other words, on a sensory level. Then you can apply what you've experienced in your workbook. Now that you have a good overview of the plants and seeds, let's go and have a look at each and every one in detail. What does a seed need to germinate to become a lovely, strong plant with leaves and flowers? Soil. Water. Light coming from the sun. And heat, the correct temperature. This is the ideal handmade greenhouse. Why is it so perfect? Because you can control the conditions of the soil. It's not always possible in nature. Let's get our hands dirty and have a look at what's inside the soil to make a seed become a healthy plant. The soil has to be fertile. It has to contain enough nutrients. Sometimes it is necessary to add more nutrients by adding compost. The soil has to contain sufficient water for the type of seed that you want to plant. The soil has to be on the right spot for the type of seed that you want to plant. Make sure that the soil is deep enough for the type of seed that needs to be planted. Water is life, even if it is for the smallest seed, like a mustard seed. Always make sure that you have enough access to water before you start planting. Not all plants need the same amount of water. Make sure that you know how much water your seedling will need. Succulents don't need that much water, but plants like ferns need enough water, so make sure to provide them with plenty. Now that you have fertile soil and enough water, we can start thinking of planting our seed and playing in the mud. It is not just people that need light coming from the sun. Light from the sun gives us vitamin D. But for plants, it is so important because it helps with the process of photosynthesis. Make sure that there are sufficient light for the type of plant. Do not move the plant too much from its adjusted position of light supply. Soil, water, and the great outdoors. What more do you want? You want the correct temperature, the correct heat. I don't know about you, but I love warm temperatures. Check that the temperature or the heat is perfect in which the particular plant will grow the best. I'm sure you've heard from a grown-up, "Oh, I love the heat coming into this room early in the morning during the winter months." Plants also requires certain temperatures during certain times of the day. So check which temperature is better for the plant at certain times of the day. Now that you know the perfect conditions in which to plant a seed, let's go and have a look at the parts of the plant. Seeds differ in size, from the very small mustard seed to a bean. Where do seeds come from? Plants produce their own seeds. Seeds reproduce by pollination or by people who harvest and plant them. Seeds must be fertilized before it is ready to germinate. Remember, before you can plant any seed, big or small, you have to check the conditions. Fertile soil, sufficient water, enough light, and the correct amount of heat. Let's have a look at the parts of the seed. This is the embryo that fills the inside of the seed. The embryo develops into a full-grown plant. The outside of the seed is the seed coat. It protects the softer inside of the seed. Inside the seed is a very small epicotyl or plumule. This is the part that develops in the first leaves of the plant. This is the inside part of the seed, the endosperm. The seed contains 2 cotyledons. The cotyledons is filled with food to supply the plant long enough until it is ready to produce its own food. Now that you know what goes on inside the seed, I bet you want to put the seed into the ground and see what happens. The germination of seeds. Before you do that, make sure that you have perfect conditions. Fertile soil, enough water, sufficient light, and the correct heat for your plant. The seed starts to germinate. It bursts open. The radicle starts to grow. The seed starts growing above the ground, and roots start to grow in fertile soil. The developing of leaves takes place. The cotyledons split and attach to the stem. A fully developed stem, as well as a fully developed root system, appears. You have a fully grown plant with a fully grown root system, loads of stems, loads of leaves, and maybe pretty flowers, which might develop into fruit in some of the plants. How does a plant stay upright? Through a well-developed root system. The functions of the root system: anchoring the plant into the ground, as well as absorption of water and nutrients. There are two types of root systems that can be seen in plants. The taproot, as in palm trees, and fibrous roots. Think of trees that lift up pavements, but they need those roots to anchor them properly. At the bottom of the root, we have the root cup. This is to protect the roots. This is the central root, the primary root, with all the lateral roots. And then we have the root hairs at the end of the lateral roots. They are tiny. Sometimes you have to look through a microscope to see them. Prop roots. Sometimes we get prop roots. This is to anchor a tree so that it won't move. Let's have a look at the stem of the plant. There are two types of stems. Let's have a look at them. Soft, herbaceous stems and hard, woody stems. Facts about stems. Transports water and nutrients from the roots to the leaves, flowers or fruits. Green stems contain chlorophyll and can thus help the plant to produce food through photosynthesis. The outside of the stem contains a protective layer that protects the softer inside. Stems consist of nodes, and new stems develop from the nodes. Stems are porous on the inside so that it can transport all water and nutrients to the rest of the plant like a water pipe. What is a cutting? If you take one part, a small part of the stem, and you put it in the ground, fertile soil, then it will start to shoot up its own roots and develop in a strong, healthy plant. You can't make cuttings from all plants, but there are a few. The leaves of the plant. All leaves have a midrib. The midrib grows from the petiole. Thousands of vines can be seen in a leaf. There are many different leaf shapes and sizes. During autumn, some leaves color and then fall down to make new leaves on the tree in the new season. You can pick them up and make an artwork of that. Evergreen trees do not lose their leaves during autumn. Deciduous trees lose their leaves during autumn. Cross-section of a leaf seen under a microscope. On top of the leaf is a cuticle. That cuticle has a certain texture. Go and feel the texture of a couple of leaves. It protects the leaf and makes the leaf waterproof. Then we have the upper epidermis. This is the palisade parenchyma section. Because this section is so close to the surface of the leaf, photosynthesis takes mainly place in this section. The mesophyll cells, the spongy parenchyma. Veins can be seen in this section. The stomatas are hidden in this section. The function of the stomatas is to let water and gases in and out of the leaf. Then we have the lower epidermis. Leaves are extremely important to humankind. It provides oxygen through photosynthesis. Pretty, colorful flowers. There are loads of different flowers, shapes and sizes. Let's look at the parts of a flower. This is the stigma, the receptacle that keeps all the leaves of the flower together. The stem of the flower, the sepals, pretty, colorful petals, the style, and the stamen. Inside the flower, pollination happens as well as fertilization. Let's go and have a look at these two processes. How does fertilization of seeds take place? Let's have a look at the parts of the flower responsible for fertilization. The pollen, the male parts, needs to fall on the seeds, which is the female parts of the flower. Then fertilization takes place. Here is the pollen, the male part of the flower. Stigma, style, the ovals, the seeds, which are the female part of the flower. The stigma, style and ovals makes up the pistil of the flower. The pistil and the seeds are the female parts of the flower. But how is it possible for the pollen to reach the seeds? Let's go and have a look at a couple of ways of pollination. Have a look at this pretty flower. Can you see there are two insects inside this flower? On the tummy of the bee, there is some pollen. The bee has worked very hard collecting this, all in a day's work. Pollination of seeds. This happens when the pollen lands on the seed. Then fertilization of the seed can take place. Insects. Insects collect the pollen, moving from flower to flower. As they move, they lose the pollen so that it fertilizes the female seed. Pollination through birds. Birds drink the nectar from the flowers. Pollen sticks to them, and as they visit the next flower, they lose the pollen to fertilize the seed. Wind pollination. Pollen blows with the wind and ends up in flowers where it can fertilize the seeds. Water. Many plants grow over or near water. As they lose pollen, it gets transported along the water stream to the next flower, thus fertilizing the female seed. Seeds are the beginning of new life. We've seen and experienced what happens to a seed when you put it in the fertile ground. If the conditions are perfect, then germination will take place and the seed will develop into a strong plant with green leaves that gives life. And pretty, colorful flowers. I really hope that you've enjoyed walking through this pretty garden with me.
I will plant a seed for you in my garden anytime.
Thank you. I hope you will grow as pretty anywhere that you are planted.